I'm Ruth Rosenberg, Director of Arts Education and Artist Engagement for the Mondavi Center. I'm pleased to be joined by Philip Blanchett and Ossie Kairaluk, two members of the Inuit soul music group Pamyua, performing at the Mondavi Center on Sunday, November 21st at 2 p.m. Interviewing them will be UC Davis Native American Studies professor and musicologist Jessica Bissett Perea. Jessica will be talking with Philip and Ossie about their performance and various aspects of their work as Inuit artists. Jessica is the author of a new book, Sound Relations, Native Ways of Doing Music History in Alaska, which has an entire chapter focused on Pamyua. All right, Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Ruth, and thank you, Philip and Ossie, for joining us today. Just for those of you watching, I wanted to just mention that this artist residency is part of a SHAPE project course, and SHAPE is Science, Humanities, Arts, Process and Engagement. And the course is a human rights course titled Radical Storywork, Performing Relational Approaches to Inuit Food Fermentation and Food Security, and it is co-taught by myself and Professor Maria Marco of Food Science and Technology, and we are thrilled to be joined by Inuk microbiologist Aviaya Leibrith-Hauptmann, as well as the Davis Humanities Institute Program Coordinator for the Mellon Public Scholars, Stephanie Maroney. So in this course, the point of SHAPE is to bring sciences and arts together. And so there's a longer story about how we all came together, but what is important for the discussion today is just to say that we're doing everything we can for the students and for ourselves in this new collaboration with the faculty is to center Inuit knowledges and performing arts processes as a means to unsettle and expand dominant modes of knowledge production in food science research. And we want to do this in order to advance conversations about food security with, by, and for, in our case, Inuit communities. And specifically, we're looking at Greenland, but that's one of the many great tie-ins to Pamyua in terms of Karina, and we'll look forward to talking with her later. But with you two today, I'd love to ask if there's anything else you'd like to share about yourselves in terms of, by way of introduction, for the folks listening at home. Philip, maybe we'll start with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Philip. My Yupik name is Gilignguk, and I'm named after my mom's uncle, who is originally from from a village called Nunapitjuak, and I grew up in Bethel, Alaska. I am now living in Anchorage, which is the big city hub in Alaska. And I've been a member of Pamyua since the beginning. We started in '95. And I'm looking forward to this conversation and really looking forward to coming down for a performance in a few weeks.
Okay, my name is Philip too as well, but my Yupik name is Asanak, named after my maternal uncle, my mom's older brother. And I grew up in the village of Shifornik, born in Bethel, and I went to school at UAF from 86 to 91 in the hopes of becoming the next Michelangelo. And I was going to get my degree in art, native arts, so-called native art, but then I asked myself an honest question: who's there to teach me? Granted that there were other native artists, but they weren't from my area, but I still took classes from them and just to expand my horizon, and it was awesome. And my thinking was, right, when I'm done with school, I'll begin to teach myself, and that's what I did after college. And my first love is traditional dancing, as far as I can remember, and I love it.
No, thank you both.
Been with Pamyua since its beginning and really opened my eyes, because it really gave me the free ticket, so to speak, to see parts of the world I've never been to.
Yeah, you both raise an interesting point about it's almost 3 decades that Pamyua has been in existence, and certainly the most famous band from Alaska and someone born and raised in and around Anchorage, we grew up listening to your music, right? And that's why, for me, it's so significant in terms of thinking about the interrelatedness of past, present, and future. That your music does that in sound. And over the years, your music has been called Yupik doo-wop, to tribal funk, and more recently, Inuit soul music. And Philip, I've heard you recently describe soul music in a way that folks might not expect. And so I was hoping you could give us a little bit more of how you understand or positioning Inuit soul music.
Well, a big part of Pamyua is about our members recognizing the significance of our identity. And it's very, I guess, more literal or obvious to like focus on our Inuit side, like our Yupik connection with our Inuit heritage, from, Greenland to all of us Inuit up north. And we're very honored and excited to share that part of our culture through music and stories and food and with our group, it really started with the story of our identity being Yupik and African American, and celebrating that those aspects of our heritage and our culture, and being inspired by the all the various things that inspired us as young people growing up. And big part of that from our African American side is this idea of what we understand as soul music, and when I was younger, I used to call it the Motown sound, or like, I like personally redefined or re-understood what it means, like what is the relationship of what is soul music. And it's always been kind of interesting thought to like basically kind of say what soul music is. Well, it's gospel, or it's R&B. It's, well, real soul music is this. And so with Pamyua, we always talked about, our African American heritage, our Black heritage through music and culture, and how it relates and is very akin to our Yupik heritage. And recently, I kind of came to this realization that about this whole thing about soul music, like it's not a genre that I'm looking for. It's not a genre of soul music that interests me. It's meaning, music that has meaning to it, music that has almost like a ceremonial sense to it. And that is something that we really identify with, like that we all identify with, meaning and authenticity, and that what brings that vulnerability, and that's what I see as soul music. So we are offering Inuit soul music, and that's kind of how I see our traditional music is its roots, soul music from the depths of our ancestry into today.
Thank you. And Ossie, I'll pose the next question to you in terms of building off of the idea of soul music as Philip is describing it, as you all performed it for years. A central interpretation of Inuit drum songs is that they're a form of prayer. And Philip, you mentioned ceremony, right? And these are sometimes understood as imperfect English keywords, right? Because people come to these terms of religion or prayer or ceremony in very different ways. We have these words carry baggage for everyone, right? But in terms of how Yupik understand drum songs as prayer, as meaning more asking for, requesting what one desires or wants or needs, and that could be for joy or for fun, for thinking creator, for abundance, for health and well-being, sharing and affirming identity and culture. You mentioned, Ossie, what music does, what drum songs can do, right? In terms of for the people performing or for the people in the audience, and even, you know, thinking about invitationals when you bring folks to perform with you. I would hope you could you tell us a little bit more about, from your perspective, what does Yupik and Inuit drum songs do?
Thank you for that question. I Philip's mom has described these songs, traditional songs, as aga yusutit, which is to pray. That's what it really translates out to. But a lot of the primarily because of the world that we are in with the contact, they are essentially now social dances, and but there are actual prayer songs related to that specific subject, where they have done bladder festivals, which are basically to honor the gift of the seal, like, gift of the whale, that they would say, that would say thank you for giving us your sustenance, your body, your physical bodies, for sustaining our lives for another year, and hope you come back in another time, which I actually have composed a song about the seal boy, and which is pretty awesome, and it's a story by itself. And then also I discovered that after composing a song for a group called the San Francisco Scottish Fiddling Club that came up here many years ago, I came up with this chant, and after some years I started revisiting that and doing this chant workshop. It can actually bring people to a different place, and but there, it was an accidental discovery, a happy accidental discovery, and how voices can transcend us to a different place.
And then thinking about the kind of work that you all are doing with revitalizing masked dancing and bringing masked dancing into this new kind of performance context of Inuit soul music. Could you both talk a little bit more about either the process that you had to go through to bring this back into being in your own performance, or the significance of masked dancing?
Well, definitely there's been a decolonizing of masks that is important for representing the authenticity of our culture and our heritage and our connection to masks. In our in our generation, Ossie's a little bit older than me, but we both came from this generation where there was a strong, the impacts of colonization and assimilation were very strong. And part of that was reflected in the how the revitalization or the reintroduction, in a way, of masks were brought back into our society. And it was almost like they were reframed as either pieces of art or almost like just gifts or what have you, to very nice pieces of wall art, like to put on a clock or something, or something to make it. So it was so as growing up, to recognize how important these images are for my own identity and my identity as a Yupik person, to see masks used in different ways, there was a disconnect. And as far as the importance that those masks, those images had, as I understood that, and so it was really important for me personally to learn more about the actual significance of the masks and how they were used and how they're integrated into our culture from an ancestral, like a historic perspective and a family perspective and regional, and how at this time with this level of assimilation and kind of this lack of connection to some of our ceremonies, how bringing these masks back in ceremony, used in dance, commissioning artists to make them similar to how mask makers were commissioned by our angatkok, our shamans in the past, and how these masks were then brought together to an event and used in an actual dance ceremony. And so there were so many things that historically were a part of masks that, like in our contemporary times, were not being done, and they weren't being kind of touched. They were just kind of, it had shifted to this other form of art. And so for me, it's really important when I talk with any mask maker, like an indigenous mask maker here in Anchorage, for example, that is working within that medium, I always encourage them to make sure that they can be worn, because that's the first step of using them and honoring that life and that connection, and finding the story of those masks and sharing that out to the universe.
Yeah. Do you want to add to that, Ossie?
Sure. The masks that generally like Philip said, was, we had changed to a certain degree where, the relationship with the outside world was not, in their view, we were not favorable. But after a while, they had started to, thanks to our elders who are patient with primarily with the religious leaders, they actually, when they realized they had done more damage to our people more than helping us, they call it save us, they some years ago, they put out a ad in the newspapers when Anchorage Daily Times and the Anchorage Times and the Daily News were off and running, and both were strong, with a bunch of other publications, regional publications, and they basically give a form of public apology for taking away what was already there. That those same Christian beliefs are no different than our native spirituality. It's all from there. It opened the door for us to begin the decolonization, part of the decolonization that Phil was talking about. In fact, even some of our, when appropriate, I was raised Catholic, and so in the Catholic Church, when we do the Our Father, we do the dance. We do it in a dance form, which is great. And then they had come up with this an amazing program, which was which means our way of making prayer. And that's when the masks came out. And the wonderful stories that are amazing stories came out that we're still in the process of relearning and whatnot. But essentially what it was is an expression of the world that we came from, being actively engaged in the world that we were nurtured by. And we have a word for that in Yupik called nutumlak. Nutumlak is a word that describes how the natural world dictates how we think, act, and express it, and behave with it. And there's ample opportunities, like the Bladder Festival that is a prime example of that, or something that symbolizes the spirit of the wind or the spirit of the water. And even not just the mask itself, but how people in the villages do things like my wife's auntie from Kelsiak. Every time they're about to set their boat onto the water and jump in, that one particular ant would take the river of the Kairaluk in the water and then put it in her face. And she would ask, "Auntie, what are you doing?" And she would say a simple response, "So the river will know us." And it's that relationship, the relationship that we were nurtured by. And it's not specific, it's just how each respective region chooses to express that and maintaining it.
Now, and you, as Pamyua as a band, has traveled all over the world, and you've had numerous opportunities to perform with and meet with Indigenous folks from throughout the globe. Are there particular issues or historical things that you find that are unique to the Alaskan context in terms of colonization? Folks who may be coming to this performance may not know much about the Arctic. And so it's one of the things that I think about a lot, and why I end with your discussion of Pamyua in my book in terms of a great example of sounds and ideas that people may think are incommensurate, but are just everyday living for those of us, especially in the North. And so I just wonder if there are things that you would want folks to know about either your own family's experiences in terms of coming into awareness of what it means to decolonize, why that might be different in Alaska or in the Arctic more generally.
I definitely, in coming from Alaska, being a part of the United States, part of our identity that's a lot more important maybe than other places is like our tax ID number and how our corporate status and how that relates and how that reflects our own priorities and our own identity, and how easily we can get lost into into the mix of the corporate structure that our country is based off of, or run by. And so that identity and that reality has really negatively, in many, from my perspective, has affected a lot of the structure and the way, the leadership in the form of decisions that are made for different Native groups and within the state that follows the guide of like this capitalistic way of priorities. And from in our ancestral way, we also prioritize our economic needs, but we also balance that with our spiritual needs, and that was integrated within the actual nourishment with the food that we ate and nourished our bodies, and with the relationships that we keep with our relatives and our neighbors, and how, so there was a different way of creating corporate structures, so to speak. And so now I like to think that we're kind of a corporate hybrid, and as artists, I know that we kind of use our own artistic license to reframe, well, what does it mean to be a corporate identity? And for us, we want to prioritize our indigeneity and have that within our the principles of our official corporate identity. And that's really it's hard to really identify, or like to determine, well, what are the rules and how do you do this or that? And that's a part of the identity we come from, is that it's our own responsibility, and we just do the best we can do.
All right. Well, it looks like we are coming to the end of the conversation. And so I wanted to pose a question to both of you. Since this is a class about Inuit fermented foods, I'm wondering if you could tell me a bit about one of your favorite fermented foods and maybe describe it for those of us listening and maybe say something about why the food is meaningful to you. So maybe Ossie, we'll start with you.
You know, everybody talks about fish heads as well as, but my personal favorite about fermented fish foods are like the seal flippers. And I describe it like this. The smell is very deceiving, but it has a tangy, tarty, peppery, long lingering aftertaste. So that's it.
Yum. I guess for me, when I think of fermented foods, I think mostly of fish, and for me, that reminds me of language. And growing up, I was not taught to speak Yupik fluently, even though I grew up in a Yupik society. It was it was a choice that my mom made and my family made. And but we were raised Yupik. We were raised to be aware and to be alive and so with that, as I became aware that I was deathly allergic to fish, that it's a I have an anaphylactic response to all fish, but I grew up at fish camp, and my best memories are at fish camp. It's always a signal, an example that my allergy, my inability to eat fish, and my inability to speak my language doesn't affect my ability to be me, and my ability to feel a part of my family and to be a part of my Yupik family. And that doesn't mean that that I am any less or any better, but I don't eat fermented fish, but my mom does, and that's really special.
Oh, thank you both very much. And we're very looking forward to your time here on campus. And so safe travels, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks to all three of you. On behalf of the Mondavi Center, say we also are looking forward to having you. And once again, I want to remind everyone the performance is on November 21st at 2 p.m. And more information about the performance and how to get tickets can be found at mondaviarts.org. So thanks, everyone. Thanks to you, artists, and Jessica. And thanks to you at home for watching. And we look forward to seeing you on November 21st.